Yeah, my name is Drew Holmes. I'm the lead writer on Far Cry 5. I was living in LA. I was freelancing. I've worked in games for 12 years now. And I got a call from Ubisoft saying if I would be interested in talking about working on a new Far Cry. And I've been a longtime fan of the franchise. So I flew up to Montreal, sat down, met some guys on the team, and talked with Dan Hay for about 30 minutes. And he gave me a pitch about Far Cry 5. He said it's going to be set in Montana. It's going to involve a cult. The bad guy's going to be a cult leader. He believes that the end of the world is coming, and you're playing a rookie sheriff's deputy that has to stop him. And after those 30 minutes were over, I said, I have to take this job. There's no way I can turn this down. And since then, I've been on the Far Cry 5 train. I studied acting in college. That was my background. But I'd always sort of writing short plays and things like that in college. It was after I finished school, I sort of decided that I didn't want to be an actor anymore, and I was sort of kicking around with doing nothing with my life. And a friend of mine who was working at a company called Volition, which was actually in the town where I went to college, said, hey, they're working on this game called Saints Row. Do you want to have a summer job as a tester on it? I was like, yeah, sure. It seems like something that'd be fun to do. And after a few months on that, they started to work on Saints Row 2, and he said, I need a writing intern. Would you want to do that? And I said, yeah, sure. That's interesting to me. And this was in 2006, 2007. And from then on, it just got more and more work. I worked at Volition till around 2012. And then I went to Irrational, worked on BioShock Infinite. I did some freelance stuff. And then I started working at Ubisoft 2 years ago this past February. What resonated with me was the type of story that Dan wanted to tell. And it's the message of the game, I think the central thesis of the game being that we're on an edge. And that's something that resonates in Joseph's message to his cult. It's this idea of humanity continually being brought to a precipice where we could cease to exist. But each time we've managed to pull ourselves away. And right now, it sort of feels like we're in a time period where we're back in that situation, where we're not quite sure when we wake up in the morning, we read the news, what is going to happen. And the game is sort of asking players, are we at that point again? And if we are, will we have the capacity as a society, as a people, to pull ourselves back from that edge? Or are we going to tip over it? And I think that's really the core of the story of the game, and you build something that I think resonates with us as storytellers, and then you put it in the hands of people to play the game, and whether or not that resonates with them, what their reaction to it is, you can't control that. You can only control the things that you've done, and I think we stand behind the story that we've told. I think that we're really proud of it, and I think players are going to enjoy it. I mean, just in terms of the cinematics alone, we're somewhere between 2 and 2.5 hours of pure cinematic. And then you've got all of the in-game mission content, you've got all the open world dialogue, all of the NPC, just so that it feels like a living, breathing world. It's far beyond in terms of character, in terms of world size, anything that any Far Cry game has done before. We had a really big, really outstanding writing team to help pull it off. And yeah, it was a challenge, but as more people get their hands on it and sort of seeing their reaction to it, it's super rewarding. I think Joseph is my number one. It was the character that I spent the most time with, the character that we all sort of really made sure that it lived up to that pedigree of a villain. What's great about it is that the people that play the game, the characters that they identify with in terms of your allies and the villains, everyone sort of has their own favorites. And I think it's a testament to the work that we put in to say we want a diverse cast of characters with a diverse amount of opinions and people that argue with each other, and then people that are good people and have bad opinions on things, because I think that it reflects the world that we live in, which is shades of gray. There are no black and white, especially when you're telling a story like this, can sort of lessen the impact for me. So I think that there's a lot of different people for everyone to discover. Particularly for a Far Cry game, it's a game that has to feel believable, but it can't without having to be realistic, where it's taking something that is familiar and plausible and then giving it that Far Cry twist to allow for the ridiculous, extreme insanity that happens in the game. So there was a lot of research in terms of the history of Montana, and very much in regards to the cult. We had Rick Ross and Mia Donovan, two people who have spent a very long time studying cults, studying destructive cults, because we needed to make sure that the cult that we were building, the Project Eden's Gate, was our own cult, but it had to feel like it was something that could exist somewhere. So in terms of the hierarchy of it, what lures people into cults, what keeps them in cults, what are the tactics that a cult leader uses to essentially brainwash these people into following them, without asking any questions. And also how a cult like this could take over a portion of a county, making sure that we did our homework in terms of how they would move into the space and drive property down, and then by driving the property price down, they can buy up more pieces of land, they can vote themselves onto the city council. Like, this is stuff that has happened in the past that we were given reference to, so that we could say, okay, this isn't something we just made up. It's something that's steeped in events that have actually happened. Oh man, I play everything. For me, I've got to be up to date on what's happening, so that what I'm working on can stay relevant. I haven't had a lot of time recently because I've been working on this game, but now I'm really starting to dive back into everything. I've been spending a lot of time with Assassin's Creed Origins. I've played pretty much everything, and everything's my favorite. And my fiance gets mad at me whenever she comes home and finds me playing video games.